Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight on our conversation with the Mountaineer Parents Club. Tonight's topic is very timely in working out housing for your student for next year. So my name's Lisa Hanselman. I'm the director of the Mountaineer Parents Club here at West Virginia University. And we are happy to be able to bring you these wonderful events. We're going to start and have everyone joining us tonight introduce themselves. So go right ahead, folks.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris McDonald. I'm the Executive Director for University Housing.
Good evening, I'm Gary Furby. I'm the Executive Director of Real Estate Operations and a member of the university's legal team.
Hello, I'm Brian Walker, and I'm the Off-Campus Housing Coordinator with the Office of Campus and Community Life.
Wonderful. So we also have some tech support. If you need anything, you can put that in the chat or reach out to our tech support tonight. So first up, we're going to go ahead and have our guests speak. And when they're done, we'll be taking questions, but please hold off putting things in the chat just for a little bit so that we make sure that we do get to your questions when it's time. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Good evening, everybody. Excited to see so many people participating tonight and interested in trying to explore what options there might be. And there are so many great options coming forward for your student next year. One of the things that we always want to try and remind some students is that, in fact, you can stay on campus, especially after your first year. We do have returners that return to campus, anywhere between about 400, 500, 600, 700 each year. Choose to stay on campus and live in the residence halls. And there's a number of reasons for that. But just so you know, you can actively do that right now. Your student, much like the application that you completed prior to coming into this current fall, it's the same process. You can complete an application online and take care of that just like you would in the past through the housing portal. And you can do self-selection. Some of you might have been able to do self-selection this past year. But that will, again, be active probably through the end of February. So you can, again, go online, apply, and actually pick the space that you want to stay in. I know, especially as students get older, maybe they're looking for some different types of accommodations. And we still do have some singles available in some of our residence halls if you're not wanting to share a bedroom and you want to explore that option. You know, some of the different reasons why students choose to stay on campus more than just their first year here at WVU is just the one primarily is the safety and security of living on campus. With our card access systems, our desk operations, knowing that there's people to respond to issues at any given time definitely provides a sense of comfort to a lot of students who choose to stay on campus. You also don't have to worry about staying over the summer. If you enter into a lease, those usually cover either the first part, the front end of the summer of the year, or the back end. And again, we're just an academic year contract, so you don't need to wonder if you're going to stick around for summer school and worry about paying rent for a period of time when you're not actually going to be here. So that is also possibly a realization of some potential savings and also maybe a hassle that you don't want to necessarily have to navigate. Also, even though we have a lot of students that say, I really want a kitchen and I want to cook, most of our students don't cook. And even if they do, it's usually microwave based, throw in some pizza rolls or maybe some popcorn, and that'll be the end of it. But if you stay on campus, you still have access to that meal plan, many of which will get, even if you move off campus, a lot of students still choose a meal plan of some type. But then again, you don't have to worry about whether or not you have to cook or navigating a kitchen or cleaning a kitchen, especially in an apartment with other roommates. Also, if a student doesn't drive or chooses not to, or you don't want to have to figure out parking challenges, in and around, I'm sure all of us at one time or another experienced different parking challenges that happen on a college campus. Then living on campus is much like this year, you're close to all the resources that you might need or want, whether that be the academic centers or whether it be the rec or athletic facilities, whatever it might be, the Mountaineer. Living on campus, you have direct access, much like your students are enjoying this year. Another option I want to make sure we remind folks of is that there's an opportunity for your student, for you or your student to come back as an upperclassman and be a resident assistant. There's lots of benefits to being an RA. For some, it's truly a watershed experience and a capstone experience for what it means to be a WVU Mountaineer. Just to kind of review what that might include, students do receive a stipend as well as a room and board plan. So you get your room and your meal plan paid for, plus we give you a little bit of money each month. And so that's a nice financial realization for quite a few, and one of the primary drivers for some that choose to do it. But even more so, it's because students can become a real vital member of a diverse team on our campus and that support our residence halls and really become part of the institution. A lot of RAs, after their time being an RA, really do point to it as being that moment where they really did feel a part of this campus and this community. You get to come back, be an advocate, a mentor, and a role model for residents, and also gain a lot of those skills that a lot of employers are looking for as far as problem solving, resilience, emotional intelligence, all of those things that we work with in training, as well as just based off of the experience of serving in this role as an RA, as a student and a peer leader. Applications are currently open, and they're open till the 2nd of December, and interviews will be later in January. But want to make sure we do highlight that if this is something they would like to explore, they do need to attend an interest meeting, and there are dates and locations related to our interest meetings off of our website if you want to explore that option. So lots of reasons why students choose to stay on campus as upperclassmen, and then for some, it might be as an RA role, and we're actively recruiting. We look forward to sitting down and exploring that option with some of our upperclassmen returning. I'll obviously stick around and answer any questions towards the end, but thanks very much for your time.
All right, good evening again. I echo Chris in saying I appreciate everybody logging in this evening, showing an interest in all the different housing options that exist here on campus and throughout Morgantown. University apartments, we kind of are a nice in-between in terms of students who may want to live on the residence halls versus students who live on campus. Maybe you want to do a little bit of both. You want to stay on campus, but you want an apartment experience. Then I would suggest university apartments is a good cross between both worlds. We are different than an off-campus apartment complex, and part of that is in our name, university apartments. We are the university operated and managed, and so as a result of that, the things that your students may be accustomed to in the residence halls, the safety, the security, the convenience of a front desk, and having folks that they can, familiar faces, that's a benefit to university apartments. So what else makes us different? In particular, and you'll hear more about the different types of leases that a student may run across, but in the university apartments, we offer individual leases. And to sum that up, it basically means that your student is only responsible for their rent. Off-campus housing in a traditional landlord-tenant relationship, you're going to find that your students likely are jointly responsible for all of the rent. And Brian will touch on that a good bit more, but I just want to highlight that we do offer those individual leases, which means that each student signs their own lease. They're not, they don't have to get a bunch of roommates together to sign. We'll certainly try to coordinate getting them in the same unit if that's something they desire. The other thing that makes us very unique and different is that all of the payments and charges associated with the apartment go through the student account, just as a residence hall bill or tuition. So if your student has financial aid and it's eligible to be used for housing, then that's an option. And so we work with those students to make sure that if they want all of their rent charged at the beginning of the semester, so it's paid for with their financial aid, that's an option that's available. Otherwise, we do traditional billing. Each month it'll be charged to that account, and then it's expected that it gets paid. But that is an option, and that's certainly unique. You're not going to find that anywhere else, outside of the university. All of our apartments include the basics, including utilities, with one exception, and that is one of our communities, College Park. We give a credit for the electricity. So if there is, an excess use, there could be a charge there. But everything else, from internet, all the utilities, cable, et cetera, that's all included in the rents that we have for each of our types. We do offer we offer roommate matching, as I indicated. If your student has, a friend or two that they want to reside with, then they can go together, pick a unit, and we will put them in there. Otherwise, if they would like for our assistance in matching, our managers at each property will work with them to do just that. And again, the difference, and Chris highlighted this, with the residence hall contracts, those are run through the academic year. University Apartments gives your student an apartment through the summer. So our leases do run August through July, which would mean that they can, if they're going to be on campus in the summer or have classes or work in Morgantown, then it's a definite option for them. We do, in limited circumstances, we have a limited selection of 6-month leases, and a few times a year we'll offer flexible leasing if we have the availability. So that's something that you can inquire about. But for the most part, all of our leases, or the vast majority of our leases, are 12-month leases, which would require the students to pay rent through the summer. We have ADA units at each of our communities. And of course, I'll touch on the location as I go through each one, but generally speaking, they are all very close proximity or very close to the core of campus or just off of campus, which means they're walkable, we do provide a shuttle to College Park. Again, just to highlight, on-site management, on-site maintenance. We also will hire students to be what we call community assistants, slightly different than an RA in that they may live on campus, but they're not required to. They may live in the community. We find that most of our students have lived in one of our apartments or the other, and so they are familiar with it, but they're also a good resource for our students. Again, just a familiar face as your students come and go. Finally, as I mentioned, university owned and operated, but also the health and safety, and that being a priority of our university apartments. It's each campus building is patrolled routinely by university police. So when there's an issue at any of our apartments, that's who responds. And again, university police are trained specifically to deal with and help our students, which is a nice, I think, added touch. We do, where possible, we monitor and have our exterior doors secured in the evenings and throughout the day. So students do swipe to come and go. I say where possible because we do have a few options at College Park that don't have exterior entrances, but that option is also available at that property as well. So, but importantly, we're different in a good way, I'd like to say. First of our 4 properties that I'm going to touch on is Vandalia. Vandalia Apartments, if you're familiar with the campus, is on the downtown campus, quite literally a 3-minute walk to the Mountaineer, right in the heart of the campus loop and near the life sciences building. So it's a very, very convenient property. Of our communities, it has the fewest units and apartments that are available there. So it usually, at some point that one will fill up probably first, but it is a very popular for students who take classes downtown. Our next community is, let's see which one I got, University Place, staying with the downtown trend. This is our apartment complex that's located in Sunnyside. If you've gone up University Avenue between the University downtown campus and the Evansdale campus, when you go through the sort of the high-rise area right there, that is University Place. We also have, as a part of University Place, the one photo there on the right shows townhomes. Those are located down on Grant Avenue. So between the apartments and the apartments there on Grant and in the towers, we have a lot of options for students to choose from. Obviously, University Place is just up the street from Summit and the Honors Dorm, and so students that like being in that location of town would likely like University Place. Our next apartment complex I want to briefly talk about is University Park. Very similar to University Place, except it's over in the Evansdale location. It's our only property that's located in Evansdale, and with very few exceptions, it's one of the only apartment complexes that is located on the Evansdale campus. So if you've got a student who is studying the health sciences or engineering or any of the Davis College courses, this is a good location. Plus, it's very convenient on game days, for the football fan among us, and even the basketball, to walk up to the Coliseum, it's all there on the Evansdale campus, and so it's a great location. Students that stay at Oakland Hall currently will be very familiar with the apartments because they are just across the courtyard. Finally is College Park. Again, this is a downtown location, but it's not right on the core of campus. So this one is just off campus. It's a walkable location, and it's, but students likely choose not to, simply because we've got a hill between us and them. But it's probably about a 15-minute walk. Very doable when the weather's good, but if it's not, we've got a shuttle that does run primarily from throughout the day, so students can get up and down from campus to their apartment. But again, all of these locations are very unique, 4 different communities with 4 different styles that I'm confident you or your student may like. And so leasing is officially underway. I will often caution folks, and I'll do so now, to say that if your student has any uncertainty, we're dealing with first-year students right now, if they have any uncertainty about their academic success or their long-term prospects with the university, there's no need to sign a lease immediately. Just because we will sign that lease doesn't mean that it's the best thing for your student. So I would always caution your student to take into consideration, looking ahead. There are opportunities, and while some of our rooms may fill up pretty quick, it doesn't mean that we're going to be completely out of options for your student later, even in the spring. So we are leasing now. We do offer, for those students that are with us currently, there's a renewal period and you can see there they have until December 21st to renew. That locks in the room. It gives them a special discounted rate, so they won't have to pay the standard rate, and they won't have to move. They can stay there through, there's the end of their sophomore year and into the junior year or third year. So that's always a good plus. We obviously try to keep our renewals and keep students with us. We offer tours. We have showrooms at each one of our communities. Stop by. Our managers and our CAs will be happy to give them a tour. Our website, which I assume has been shared, is very useful, and gives you all the existing floor plans, all of the rates that we have. And so again, I think all the information you might have is available on web, or you can call our offices, schedule that tour and take a look at it. But again, I think it's a nice University Apartments. It's a nice in-between location that's not off campus. You have some of the comforts of being associated with the university, but at the same time, a lot of independence for your student as they enter that second year. So happy to address questions later on. Thanks again for being here.
And hello, I'm Brian Walker, the off-campus housing coordinator, and I'm going to talk about housing that does not have any direct affiliation with West Virginia University at all. The housing that I deal with is privately owned. Sometimes it's owned by large student housing corporations. Other housing that we have in Morgantown is offered by small-time landlords, and there's quite a variety of off-campus housing available. Okay, something I wanted to build on that Gary was mentioning was, for a student who is less than 100% certain that they are coming back to college next semester, Gary and I would like to discourage that. If you want to hedge your bets and have a place, for your student, I would recommend looking to the residence halls. I think that would be your best bet. And the reason for that is if you change your mind about living in the residence halls before May 1st, you will be able to walk away from that contract. If something happens to your status as a student, your contract will end. And that right there is a really great reason to take another look at university residence halls. I think that's a great idea. And what I have found, I also work with our commuting population at WVU, and what I have found over the years is that students who are on campus are more connected to what's going on around campus and tend to do better. They know what's going on. They get to meet more people. I think they have a better experience in college. The more time that they spend on campus, I think that's very important. And as somebody who has been dragged into a few roommate situations in the past, I find it really comforting that the residence halls have the residence hall assistants and the residence life specialists around who can help mediate issues among students. They're new adults, and sometimes they're put into social situations that they just haven't had time to adjust to. Like I said, I like the fact that there's RAs and residence life specialists are there. Okay, for anybody who's already living off campus, more than likely your landlord has asked you if you once again want to sign a lease. They typically take the month of October to do that, but as we saw during Gary's presentation, University Apartments is giving its residents up until the end of the year in order to decide if they want to renew or not. Not all apartment complexes, not all landlords will do that. So I think that's another reason to take a look at University Apartments. When it comes to signing an off-campus lease, there are some things to remember and some things to look out for. No matter what happens to your status as a student or what happens in your life, and unfortunately things can happen from time to time. For a student who is in a situation where they don't need their housing, if they're already locked into that contract off campus, that can be a really tough situation. In the past, I've recommended to students that if they are in that situation, to try to find someone to whom to sublease or to relet. That's become difficult in Morgantown because we actually have more off-campus housing than we currently need. And that's good in one sense because it's keeping prices lower. It's bad in one sense in that, if a student has signed a contract and then no longer, wants the space, it can be more difficult to get out from under that contract. Another thing to think about when it comes to living off campus, if you have a roommate spat, unfortunately, there's probably not going to be anybody around to help mediate that. I mean, the landlord probably isn't going to care. At some of the bigger complexes, they might have a community assistant who would be willing to listen to your issue, but there's nobody immediately around the referee, unfortunately. Another thing to think about is location. Location is everything, and I think that's one of the things that really recommends University Apartments and our residence halls. Now, we do have some off-campus housing that is very close to campus, and we have some beautiful, student apartment complexes. Unfortunately, they're several miles from the downtown campus and from Evansdale as well. They're too far to walk. Oftentimes, they do offer shuttles for their residents to get them back and forth to campus. But that can present a transportation issue in heavy traffic, or if we have a bout of inclement weather. Those are all things to think about when it comes to location. Some of those complexes that are farther away from campus are beautiful facilities, and they offer some terrific values when it comes to off-campus living, but the trade-off there is the location. One other thing to think about when it comes to off-campus housing versus university apartments, an off-campus landlord is likely not going to wait if you have a financial aid snag or an issue with a scholarship or something like that. University apartments obviously will. Okay, when it comes to doing research to find off-campus housing, there are several places to look. One is our Office of Campus and Community Life website. The URL is campuslife.wvu.edu. We do have a lot of housing information there. And we also have information about landlords, parking. There's a little bit of everything on the off-campus housing website. You can also look for a roommate on our roommate resources page. Students who already have housing but are looking to find a roommate to move in with them can go to our roommate resources page and post that availability. Students who are looking for housing can always go in and see what's available. Sometimes you can find some remarkable deals in off-campus housing on the roommate resources pages, and it's something to think about. Another resource that sometimes students will overlook is our student newspaper, the Daily Athenaeum. And they really shouldn't overlook it because A, it's a wonderful newspaper, and B, it's a fantastic place to look for housing. Any of you who were students here, once upon a time, as I was, can remember that that was a fantastic, the DA was a fantastic way to find housing, and it still is. It's still a really good resource. The students can pick up a hard copy every Wednesday on campus, or better yet, they can take a look at it online at the DA's website. And there are many more housing listings online than what you'll find in the hard copy page. So that's another thing to consider. Okay, there are many different types of housing available to students. We have a really vibrant market here when it comes to student housing. Some of our students are interested in some of the larger homes that can hold, let's say 4 to maybe even 8 or 9 people. There aren't very many of those on the market anymore. A lot of those reached their rentable lives and have since been raised. But there are some that are in quite nice condition and still available. You find those large houses because of zoning around the downtown campus only. You will not find those around Evansdale or Health Sciences. Now, when it comes to apartments, there are so many apartments in Morgantown from which to choose. And they're in every location, downtown, Evansdale, Health Sciences, and farther away. You do see more condominiums around the Health Sciences campus because we have obviously the med school, the law school, and some other professional programs over on that side of campus. And you'll find, I don't want to say nicer accommodations, but more residential accommodations. That might be the best way to put it. Also, townhomes you can find around all 3 campuses, and there's a number of townhomes available on the student rental housing market. One thing that I think some first-year students don't consider enough is location and transportation, really. How are you going to get to and from campus? For the student who lives, within, let's say, a 15 or 20-minute walk to campus, the obvious question is, well, you could walk. And we do have so much available off-campus housing that is walkable to all 3 of our campuses. And that's really something to consider. Location is a luxury. And for some students, it's an absolute necessity. The closer they are to campus, the happier they are. And that's where all their friends are too. So I understand that. But if you go with one of the properties that is located farther away from campus, too far to walk, some of those are really nice communities with hundreds of other students there, and they have community rooms, swimming pools, fitness centers, computer labs, lots of different places to meet people, and that's what college is really all about. But you have to go to class as well. So it's best to look at how they are going to get to and from campus. I think that's very important. Please know that we also have a very strong bus system here in the Morgantown area called Mountain Line. Our students ride the Mountain Line buses for free, and it is a great way for students to get around campus. And not every student wants or needs a car on campus, and I would encourage those students, if they do want to travel around, maybe do some shopping, to try Mountain Line, because it is a very valuable resource for our students, and it's completely free of charge. Now, when I say that I deal in Morgantown housing, or I deal with Morgantown housing, I should say, I'm really referring to the whole area. Actually, however, we have student housing in 4 different cities in our area. The cities of Morgantown, Westover, Star City, and Granville. And those are 4 different municipalities with different policies when it comes to rental housing. Unfortunately, the only housing that is inspected in the area is housing that lies within the city limits of Morgantown. And that housing is subject to inspection at least once every 3 years by our City of Morgantown Code Enforcement Office and by our Morgantown Fire Department. I take a lot of comfort in knowing that the housing that's located within Morgantown city limits is inspected by 2 different governmental entities. And I have great respect. I've worked with our city code enforcement officers. I've worked with our fire department marshals for a long time. I have much respect for them, I should say, and I think they do a very good job in their inspections. Now they're looking for obviously fire safety, habitability, structural integrity, that sort of thing. And really, code enforcement is just looking at basic habitability issues. They're not really concerned so much with the way something looks as opposed to the way it's supposed to operate. The fire department does a very rigorous fire safety inspection of all rental housing within city limits. Some of those big student-centered apartment complexes that I've been talking about, the ones too far from campus, most of those are located in the county and are not inspected by any governmental agency. And when it comes to city limits, is really kind of hard to define in Morgantown. It's a very odd looking map, which you can find on the city's website, but it's probably not going to make a great deal of sense to you. I've been studying it for years, and it's kind of crazy. But when it comes to wondering, what housing is within city limits, anything that's within a 20-minute walk of the downtown campus is going to be within city limits. Most of the properties around Evansdale and Health Sciences are also within city limits. It's the properties that are farther away that aren't inspected, unfortunately. Now, we already talked about university apartments, but they do have a location on their side. And that's another thing to consider. All of our university apartment complexes are located, in the heart of campus. Cuts down on travel time if your classes are just across the street. And that convenience is certainly worth taking another look at university apartments. Okay, Gary alluded to this a few minutes ago during his presentation. I do want to talk for just a couple of minutes about the different types of leases that we see in Morgantown. No two landlords have the same lease, obviously, but there are two types of leases. Now, Gary did a pretty good job of explaining what an individual lease was. And it's sort of the opposite of a joint lease. But just to recap, an individual lease is one in which, let's say that there are 3 roommates in an apartment. Under an individual lease scenario, each roommate would have signed a separate lease with the property manager at that particular complex. And that means that for each student, no matter what happens in the future, all they are obligated to pay is the amount that they've contracted for in that lease. And that's the big difference between individual leases and joint leases. Joint leases operate very differently. Taking those same 3 students that I alluded to just a minute ago, if they go into a joint lease scenario, all 3 students are going to sign just one lease with the landlord or property manager, and it binds them together financially. It makes them jointly responsible for the rent. If something happens to one of those students, that might make the rent much higher for the other 2 who are remaining. And that's something to consider when it comes to joint leases. That if there is a downside to a joint lease, that is it. The potential liability that you may have to be paying more in rent than you originally bargained for. But there's nothing wrong with legally with that type of lease. It's just the type of lease that it is. There are some things that recommend joint leases. Guarantors are not required with a joint lease, as they are with most individual leases. The exception there is university apartments. University apartments does not require a guarantor signature. The other properties in town that are not directly affiliated with West Virginia University will look for a guarantor signature. And that's going to be somebody 25 years of age or older with an established credit history, probably a parent or a grandparent, perhaps. Now, I think with individual leases, if a student signs a contract that's an individual lease and then decides that they don't want or need it anymore, that process, rather than subleasing, is something that we call reletting. That student, in most scenarios, would be able to go out, try to find somebody else to take their space in the unit, and then they bring that person back to the property manager. And if that person passes, fiscal muster, that new person will be signed to a contract, and then the old contract will be torn up. Reletting is more of a release legally than subleasing. You find subleasing with joint leases, and in a traditional sublease scenario, the person you sublease to pays you, and then you pay the landlord. So there is still a legal connection there. There's still a contract with a sublease, and that's why joint leasing is better. I do find that a lot of first-year students will sign an individual lease because of a lot of the protections, the financial protections that they afford, and I do think it's a good idea. As students move through their college careers, junior or senior year, I think the joint leases, are something to consider more carefully, weigh more heavily, to think about those. When it comes to signing, particularly for first-year students, I recommend that they wait until the end of the semester. Wait until they get those first semester grades under their belts. And they also need to check up on the people that they're considering living with next year. See how their roommates are doing financially, or not financially, but scholastically, academically. But financials are also a big important of it too, not to downplay some students running into financial problems. There are a couple of caveats in that. If a student is looking for a particular type of housing that is in short supply, that student might well have to sign something before the end of the fall semester. A type of housing that comes to mind right off the bat would be one of those large houses around the downtown campus that can hold, let's say, 5 to 9 persons living in it. There's very few of those left on the market. Just a handful, and they can be kind of hard to come by. One-bedroom units can also get into short supply, but not usually during the fall semester. I would say like late spring into summer months, one-bedroom units can be difficult to find. But you do a good job helping your students kind of rationalize through who might be a good roommate and who might not be. You never really know somebody until you live with them, and you can learn so much from your roommates, and it can make college a wonderful experience. But poor roommate choices, unfortunately, can make college not such a great experience. And I think that having too many roommates, like in one of those big houses that I was talking about, is not necessarily a great idea for students. I think that no more than 4 tenants in an apartment or a house, that's probably a manageable number. Like I said, though, with bigger numbers like that, I would just stay in the residence halls. I think that would be a better option than going into one of those big houses, because the big house with 9 bedrooms probably only has 1 or 2 bathrooms, and that's just not a good scenario. It really isn't. It's a good idea for students to choose roommates who have habits that are similar to theirs. You don't have to pick, students shouldn't pick people who are identical to them, but the whole reason to go to a large college, large university like ours, is to meet new people and learn more about different cultures. But students should try to find people who have habits that are similar to theirs. And I'll just throw out a couple of very simple examples. For a student who is very neat and clean and tidy, I would recommend trying to find another student who had similar cleanliness standards. And for students whose standards might be a little lax, they would probably be better with somebody else who had standards like theirs. I think that cuts down on a lot of roommate disagreements. And some students like to burn the midnight oil. I am not that person. I'm usually in bed by 10 o'clock, but you'd be surprised how many emails I get from students at 2 o'clock in the morning. So for students who are night owls, I think that they should probably try to find roommates who are also up late into the evening, so that there aren't any arguments about making noise late at night or anything like that. So many of our off-campus properties these days offer included utilities, and I think that's a wonderful thing. But especially in joint lease scenarios, you do find for students who are renting houses, oftentimes the utilities are not included with those houses. And if that's the case for your student, they really should separate. They should split up the responsibilities, when it comes to utilities. And there's always food considerations as well. Okay, I'm opening up a can of worms here talking about pets. But we do have a number of students here in Morgantown who have their pets with them. I certainly understand that. I had a pet when I was an undergraduate. Service animals must be accommodated off campus by landlords. Emotional support animals, that's a real gray area, and it's not as clearly defined as laws regarding service animals. When it comes to emotional support animals, I would recommend talking to one of our attorneys at WVU Student Legal Services. In fact, I think more students should go there and have their leases reviewed. And that's one of the services that they provide at Student Legal Services. Especially for a student who has never signed a lease before. Some of these contracts can be difficult to get through. Some of them are quite lengthy as well. We have a couple of leases in town that are approaching 50 pages, and it's a lot to get through, and it's dry stuff. It's not great reading. And utilize our student legal services team to help you get through that. They will sit down with students, go through the leases clause by clause, explain everything, explain the student's responsibilities, explain the landlord's responsibilities. And at the end of the lease review, they won't tell the student whether or not they should sign the lease, because that's up to them to make that decision, but they have the information at hand. Our attorneys will tell students if they've had trouble with a particular off-campus entity, if they've been in court with let's say a particular apartment complex or landlord. They will tell the student that, we've had trouble with this entity before, maybe you should keep looking. And the best part about it is that our legal services are free to all WVU students. They cannot represent one WVU student against another because that would be a conflict of interest. And they can't represent a student against the university because that would also be a conflict of interest. But they can also do other things for students like insurance cases, family law, expungements. Most of the things that you might seek out an attorney for on Main Street can be handled by our legal services team.
Okay.
Nope.
Brian, you want to cover this? Sorry, I forgot you had one more slide here.
That's okay. So did I. You can follow us on social media. Our off-campus housing feed on Twitter is our handle is on the screen right now, as is WVU Student Life. We also have a Facebook page at WVU Student Life and Instagram.
All right. Well, now it's time for the Q&A. So we have a couple already in the chat. I'm going to read those out, but if you have a question out there that we have not yet covered in this presentation, throw it out there and we're ready to go. So first up, Gary, I understand that shuttles run regularly, from 7 to 4 p.m. But what about late classes, test, and lab? Can a student request a shuttle after 4 p.m.?
Yeah, so I assume we're talking about College Park. And at the moment, the only option for our College Park shuttle is ends at 4 o'clock. However, as Brian mentioned, I know that the Mountain Line, Pink Line runs past College Park, I think until about 6 o'clock at night. So it's a little more option. But beyond that, at the moment, unfortunately, I can't offer up any solutions. I know this is something that we have been asked about here as of late. And so we are, looking into options in the future, but I don't want to make a promise that I can't follow through with. But that is something I know certain students have asked about, and so we're looking into it.
Okay, Gary, stay with me for the next one. I've heard from my student that many of these units are already reserved. How many of these of on-campus apartments are available for second-year students?
Yeah, so at the moment, as of earlier today, I got an updated report, and it looks like we should still have about 1,200 beds available. Now, I will point out the obvious. I mentioned earlier about the renewal period that our current residents have through the end of the semester. And so what we could end up with is a period of time where we quite literally are waiting to see if those renewals will occur. Now, what each manager will do in that instance is keep a list. And so I don't want to suggest that we have a wait list, but that in essence is how that would work. If we can't fulfill that opportunity, you'll know December 22nd. And otherwise that will come available at that point in time. And again, that is also, that date is strategic because that is also the date when grades following the release of grades. So at that point, that's when everybody should know safely that they can sign their lease.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Chris. Does an RA receive a full or partial tuition waiver?
Although the compensation package for the RA position is great, it does in fact not include anything related to a tuition waiver. It's room and board, so all your housing is paid for, you get a meal plan, and then there is a monthly stipend that I will roughly say is about $100 to $120 maybe a month. And so if you just take the housing and the dining plus a stipend, it's a pretty exceptional package.
I agree. It sounds great. Okay, next up. When is a deposit required when signing a university apartment lease? And when does that first bill hit?
So unlike other landlords, we don't do a deposit. We've security deposit. That is, quite frankly, with the university and with it being student accounts, it became too cumbersome in the first few years of university apartments. And so that's a perk in essence. There's no security deposit. The first rent, and somebody will keep me honest here because it's a little complicated because the first rent would be due August 1. However, it may show up on your student account July 1. It's posted, but it's not actually due until August 1. And that's just the nature of student accounts. Things post about 30 days before they're actually due. So there can be some confusion around that, but it would not be due until August 1. And again, if your student is going to be taking advantage of advancing their rent through using financial aid, then that first payment for all of your fall semester wouldn't actually be due until financial aid and bills are processed. And I don't know what that date is, but it's not on August 1. I know that.
Thank you. Now, Chris, could you tell us a little bit about what the requirements and responsibilities of an RA would be?
Well, that's actually a pretty big question. And I would invite you all anybody who's interested in that option to take a look at the website and look at the job description. And that's what those interest sessions are for, to articulate kind of what the job is, what the opportunities within that job are, and some of what those expectations are. And very 30,000 foot view in general terms, you're looking at time spent in the halls, working the desk from time to time, also being in the halls at night to support other students as different things come up, supporting other entities on campus in response to different issues that might happen, doing programming. I think in a general term, you might look at the RA role as far as scheduled time per week. You're probably looking at around 20 hours or less. But then again, the nature of the role also means that something might happen that you have to respond to. We often find that most of our students, once they get the hang of it and they get the routine, they're able to manage it very well. And in fact, for some, because they do have to create a schedule around some of those expectations, actually are able to really improve their time management skills. And actually, some even do even better in school because they actually functionally create that study time versus just going, oh, I'll study later because they don't have any other, they just can get distracted easily. Now they have to regiment their time a little bit more. So it has some pretty positive outcomes that way as well.
Do you think that a band member could successfully be an RA?
Yeah, I think so. If I'm not mistaken, we've had members of the marching band be RAs. Obviously, it's a little depending on how they execute and what their roles are. We've even had some music majors, so they might participate in other kinds of bands. But no, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we've had some members BRAs. I do know it gets a little interesting because the band returned early and training. So I'm not going to tell you 100% with 100% positivity off the top of my head that that's possible. But that is definitely a question that could be asked and sent forward. And I'm more than happy to follow up on that if we can find out who asked that question and contact, and I can find out that answer for you.
Absolutely. Okay. Brian, what do you know about Pierpont?
It's a very nice facility. It's about 50 years old. It was once one of the university residence halls. We used to rent it from the McKinney Properties company. McKinney took it back over about half a dozen years ago and renovated it. It's a nice renovated apartment complex, very popular place for our students on the Evansdale and Health Sciences campuses to live. They do offer individual leases. It was one of the few properties in off campus that did lease out last year. Most of them did not.
Thank you. Okay, so it seems like a lot of students are under the impression that they need to execute leases ASAP. What percent of that happens now versus early spring? And let me just say that that's been going on for the last 30 years. People think they have to hurry up and sign leases, but it's just among students. Among the adults, they don't feel that same way. But gentlemen, whoever wants to take that.
Well, I'll start. It's marketing. All property managers want to get these beds leased out. They live or die by the number of leases that they sign every quarter. And they've, like I said, they've got to sign, they've got to get contracts signed. And oftentimes they're the ones who are saying, well, if you don't sign for this apartment today, somebody else is going to take it. I mean, it's an old tactic, but it works because you're creating demand when supply is ready. It's good marketing, but it's not great for our students.
Gary, anything else you want to add there?
Yeah, I would say there will definitely be apartments available until well into the spring semester and even beyond. We have certain units. We were very close to being full this past year, but we still had a few. If somebody called and they needed an apartment and they weren't particular, that's the key, because most students, they want to be in a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom or a 1-bedroom. 1-bedrooms, as I think Brian indicated, those are usually, they will go quick. But beyond that, there's almost always an apartment available. If you're willing to be flexible in what you might be expecting. And certainly to Brian's point earlier, the inventory in Morgantown is such that there will always be apartments available somewhere. So it really just comes down to those sort of specifics, that if you're looking for a particular type in a particular location, then you need to check on those, but there will always be something available in town.
So Gary, is parking included in university related apartments?
No, so our rent is so let me answer it this way. There is parking available for an additional fee. And it's limited. That I will say that parking, being first come first serve, will sell out before our apartments do. And so that is often, again, a driving force for our renewals. Folks want to be close, and we also have for the most part, our apartment residents get first priority in our lots, and each of our apartment complexes have dedicated parking lots, with the exception of our parking at University Park and at University Place, where we have a very large garage. There will be opportunities for non-residents to buy those, but at Vandalia and at College Park, it's exclusive for residents.
Thank you. So what's the average and or fair price off-campus housing for a 2-bedroom?
Oh, gosh, that could be, that depends on so many different factors. Location's the first one. Downtown campus locations tend to be more expensive than what you find around Evansdale or Health Sciences. And going back to what Gary was talking about just a minute ago, a lot of downtown locations either do not have parking to offer at all, or that will come at a premium, meaning additional rent per month. For something very close to campus that's even bare bones, I think you're probably looking at about $500 a person. Something a bit nicer with included utilities is going to be in the $600 range. Over on Evansdale and Health Sciences, you can probably chip away at those totals by about $100 or so.
Okay, and just a ballpark figure, Gary, what's the average cost of university apartment or high-low?
So high-low, our low is, I think, right around $670 a month. And our high will get you, our high is for a 1-bedroom at University Park, which is just over $1,500. And,
Okay.
and I say that with some hesitation, but admittedly, they will lease up. And so, but just to speak real quickly there, the range, I don't know if I said it clearly in the first part, but, we do offer 1-bedrooms at most of our communities, not all. But then we do have any combination of 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, multiple different types of configurations. The rates, floor plan and rates page on our website will give you a real good rundown. They're all in one location. But yeah, from they'll give you the idea. And I should also add that most of our complexes have a lot of upgraded amenities, things that you may find in your own homes or not. They're marble countertops and granite countertops, I should say, and a lot of good amenities. And so the prices seem high, but I can say with some confidence that their folks will lease them, and the benefits of being associated with the university help to offset or at least justify some of that extra cost.
So if a student releases for a 2nd or 3rd year, can they lock in that rate from year to year, or does it change?
The rate will change. However, there is an incentive there. There's a reduced rate. So right now, I don't think we have our renewal rates published, but on average, it's a 1% to 2% difference from what you're seeing posted on that webpage as a standard rate, and that is sort of the incentive. And again, the opportunity to keep the apartment should they want to. Now, what will often happen is we'll see some students who may start out in a 4-bedroom, and then as they get further up into closer to graduation or even grad school, then that's when they may move over into a 1-bedroom within the same complex, or we will have students who will move from one complex to the next within our university apartment family. So I think, again, it speaks to folks wanting to, once they get in, they tend to like the apartments.
So we're getting close to 8, folks, but please hang in with us because we do have a lot more questions that we'd love to answer for you today. So are there any short-term leases for a student who might want to just spend the summer, May to July, until that new leasing period begins?
I know at university apartments, that's something that we have been able to offer. And to Brian touched on this a little bit ago. Often we will have students who will sign the 12-month lease and then know that they're coming up on May and maybe they've gotten a job out of town. We work with those students to re-let those apartments where possible. And so often that becomes a de facto summer lease period. We also, I mentioned those apartments on Grant Avenue, the quote unquote townhomes. Those don't always fill up. And so we have turned those into some flexible leasing opportunities that can be available through the summer.
Thank you. Okay, so do scholarships apply for campus apartments?
They may. Obviously, some scholarships have specific terms and conditions. So I would say, if it's a scholarship that will cover housing, it should definitely cover the apartments, university apartments. Although I would always caution them, check with the financial aid counselor, and to be certain of that. But that is, we see a lot of students. I think it's close to 20% of our students or more will use financial aid to pay their rent.
Okay, so any recommendations for some off-site storage for the summer when you're transitioning to off-campus housing? I think Brian, you can get that one.
I sure can. If you visit our Campus and Community Life website, under the Off-Campus Housing Information tab, you will find our list of frequently asked questions, and we do have a listing of storage units in the Morgantown area. It has not been updated for the last few months, so there may be more options available.
Thank you. Okay, so is co-ed housing available on campus?
Within the university apartments, it can be. That is one question. Sometimes we do match up folks. They come to us, obviously, two folks who want to, or multiple different combinations of folks who want to lease an apartment together, or they'll be open to having any roommate. And when we go through the selection process or the assignment process, that can happen within the apartments.
Chris, you want to answer that as well for your side of things?
Sure. So all of our residence halls are co-ed with the exception of Borman North. As far as in-room co-ed, we do have some locations around campus for gender neutral housing, and that's by request and application. And so if there's someone who needs that or is looking to explore that option, they can connect with our office and we'll be happy to discuss that with them. It's on a pretty limited basis.
Thank you. We're going to stick with you, Chris. Can
Okay.
sophomores live in the engineering LLC?
Yes, and we do have some that do currently.
That was easy enough. Okay, back to Gary. Is rent due on the first of each month billed to the student account or due by semester like with residence halls, and do payment plans apply?
So I'll take the last part first, in that payment plans are not eligible for rent, or our rent is not eligible for payment plans. And with respect to whether it's billed monthly or by semester, that is the student's choice. There's some additional paperwork and so forth to coordinate the advanced renting, but that is, again, we have a large portion of our students who live in the apartment do take advantage of that each semester.
Okay, so my son's been looking at housing on Grant Street. Is this a safe area close to engineering?
Yes, no, and yes. I'll take that first. Grant Avenue is in the heart of Sunnyside. That is one of our traditional student neighborhoods. It's a great location, extremely close to the downtown campus. However, our Statler College of Engineering is on our Evansdale campus. That's not to say that a student couldn't walk from Grant Avenue to engineering, but it's not what I would call close. That student would be best served by walking to our Beechhurst PRT station and then taking that conveyance out to engineering, or picking up one of the Mountain Line buses. Mountain Line there's always a Mountain Line bus somewhere in the Sunnyside area.
Okay, back to Gary. I think you touched on this a little bit in your presentation, but if you could just tell us a little bit more about if the student doesn't already have a roommate prior to going into a lease for the apartment, how you might match them together.
Yes, our managers have there's a worksheet that the students will fill out. I don't know that I'd call it a personality match per se, but I think we're on the same page there. Generally try to find some interests, some commonality among the students. And I think, for the most part, they're pretty successful. But as Brian indicates, sometimes roommates, there's issues, and by the same token, our staff will do our very best to try to diffuse situations and work with students to resolve that. So the answer is a long yes.
Thank you. So, is it common for landlords to require a liability insurance?
I'm assuming you're referring to renters insurance, and we do have some off-campus landlords who do require the purchase of renters insurance. A couple of our off-campus facilities are also connected to an insurance company and will sell it to students who do not have it. And I think it's a very wise purchase to have renters insurance.
I know we strongly encourage it. It's just in general, it's there for usually for the students' protections. Life happens, and then sometimes things go wrong, and so there could be damage to their not only damage to the apartment, but damage to the students' personal items. And so those renters insurance policies can be very helpful. So it should also be noted, and everybody's policy is going to be different, but sometimes your homeowner's policy will also extend to your student wherever they're living. You may have to certainly call and check on that. Sometimes you have to report that to your homeowner's insurance company before, but often that is also a coverage that's available in lieu of those renters policies.
And, as a mom, I would say it's worth having, because it'd be such a shame if you needed it and didn't have it. Okay, Gary, if there is a roommate dispute at university apartments, is changing apartments ever an option?
It is an option. I will say that one of the if there's an unintended consequence of having high occupancy, it is that you sometimes don't have available beds or rooms to move folks around easily. That said, we almost always have some vacancy. And so again, if the student, often if a student is in a 2-bedroom, they may not want to move to a 4-bedroom, but that may be our only option at that particular housing complex. But we do usually work with our students to try to resolve all these situations. We can't solve every problem, but when we often offer solutions. Sometimes they're taking, we have in some circumstances even allowed students to move from one complex to the other. So college can be a difficult time, and so sometimes the more space you have between you and a problem is often the best solution. And so taking that into account, we do try very hard to try to resolve those circumstances. And depending on and in this case I'm talking about more than just a dispute, but there are times where folks need to be away from other individuals, and so we'll work with our students to always make sure that they have a safe option should that be something that's needed.
Thank you. And what are the bicycle parking or storage options at university apartments?
That's a good question. And as I sit here, I do know that we have bicycle storage options. I know at Vandalia, and I think we may have at University Place. I don't have a really good answer, but that's something that we can try to circulate something around. But I've never been asked that before, but that's something I know we can look into and try and circulate a better answer.
Okay, so are there job opportunities to work within university apartments?
Yes, so I mentioned our management staff. Certainly we have full-time university employees who make up our, managers and assistant managers at each of our properties. But then we also have a host of student workers, CAs, community assistants. And depending on the property, that may range from anywhere from 3 to 5 different students who work with us. And so we also have, working with our marketing team, marketing community assistants. So there's a host of opportunities, and we will hire. It's difficult to say exactly when we hire, because we keep a lot of folks for multiple years. I would say, have your student keep their eyes open. I think right now we have a few open spots among our properties, but that is something that is definitely an option. And again, I mentioned, I think earlier, we find that those students who've lived with us are often the best folks at answering questions, and when it comes to marketing and comes to getting spreading information about the apartments. And so we have a lot of CAs who have lived with us or are currently living with us who work for us.
So how do you find parking options if you are living off campus?
I have a listing of parking options on our commuter student programs webpage. It involves university parking. It also has information about the city of Morgantown's parking through the Morgantown Parking Authority. And I've got a listing of area landlords who offer parking to students as well.
Right, so you all can contact our off-campus housing office and Brian specifically for that info. And we'll try to grab that and put that in the chat as well. So next question, do off-campus housing apartments come furnished or unfurnished?
Both. It really depends on the property that you select. Properties are typically either furnished or unfurnished. That said, we do have a couple of larger apartment complexes for students that will give students the option. One of those that comes to mind would be Canvas Townhomes.
Gary, you want to touch on that for
Oh,
WB apartments?
yeah, I may not have said it. All of our apartments are furnished. And so that's, basic, there's a sofa, dining table, kitchen table, whatever the case might be, beds, desks, dresser options. Despite all that, we still see a number of students moving in furniture. But I think it's entirely possible to lease an apartment from us without having to bring any major furniture in.
That would work out really well. Okay, what about cable and internet? How does that work?
For university apartments, it's included. It's going to, each property, we're close to being able to say that it's the same at all properties, but it's not. So I would refer you to the website for the specifics, but generally it is included. Most of the apartments are going to have university Wi-Fi available. University Park, I think, is the one exception that has at the moment Comcast. But again, that's all the basic information is posted on the website, but it is included in the rent.
Okay, well, that's our last question of the day. So we went a little over. I'm sorry about that, but they were good questions and we certainly couldn't not answer those for you. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thanks to our wonderful folks who joined us to answer the questions, and Ricky, our tech support, and Carissa, who was in that chat, answering all those questions for us and dropping in those links. So families, if you have more questions, you can always reach out to us at the Mountaineer Parents Club. We'll get you to the right people and answer all those questions that we can. All of our info up here, you can find our website, our email, join us on Facebook, and always call that parent helpline. It's answered by our colleague Katie, and she'll be happy to help you as well. I hope you all found this helpful. And if you have a friend who wants to know more, we will be putting this recording up on our website in a few days, so you can check it out there. And with that, we will say good night. Thank you.